Hello. Welcome back, gentlemen. Welcome back to the podcast. I've got a special guest here. We've got Aaron joining us on the
What's going
podcast.
on? What's going on, everyone?
Thank you for joining. This can be like Batman Robin, Pat McAfee, AJ Hawk type duo here. We'll figure out
Yeah,
who's who as we go. But what we were planning on doing is going over drafts and kind of figuring out who we think are the winners, who we think are losers, go over some picks. We'll just kind of freestyle the best we can. And then after that, we'll go over some bold predictions. I know Aaron and I have some plans on doing more episodes. We want to deep dive into some people's drafts or some people's rosters, tear them apart, talk some shit, have some fun.
yeah, I think it's
Um,
gonna be a good time for sure, for sure.
yeah. All right. Let's dive right into it. Here, I'll share my screen here. So, um, Aaron, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I can definitely kick it off. So from what I was looking at, I think for me the draft winner that I saw was definitely Sammy. I think he got a couple of really high picks in the first round. He was able to secure his quarterback that he needed with Williams. I do think he kind of had a luxury pick with taking Brock Bowers at pick 8. But based off of what the roster construction he has and kind of getting to know him as a game manager, he really appreciates having a deep tight end room. And then I really think that the selection of Drake May in the second round was huge. That was such a
How did
great
Drake
value
May
pick.
fall that far? How the hell did Drake May fall that far? I want to know what is wrong with some of those other people that just passed him on by.
I think maybe a lot of people got really scared off that the Patriots are only looking like a 4-win team. And so it sounds like the Patriots are also looking to kind of bring May along slowly. So maybe a little too scared to take a player that's not going to see the field for the first 8 weeks potentially.
Yeah, I guess. The guy was picked 103. This is Dynasty. So why are people not looking and getting some quarterback depth?
Yeah, definitely. I know that I was looking to make a trade to secure that selection. Unfortunately, the manager that I was looking to deal with actually appreciated Sammy's trade more, and so that's just
Aaron,
kind
let's
of how
just
things
let's just
roll.
be real. No one likes to trade with you.
That's a true story. I think that it's pretty surprising to me just because my track record in this league so far hasn't been the greatest with trades. Seems like some of the managers might have been able to pick that up, but I guess not.
Well, there's always tomorrow. There's always a trade tomorrow. Yeah, I think I'd have to agree with you. I mean, Sammy's pretty analytical. It seems like when it comes to either trading, selecting, free agency, and I think this draft just kind of proved it. I don't think he really needed Drake May, and I don't think he was going in expecting to draft Drake May. But I mean, when you have a value like that falls, and when you have the luxury of having a team that's constructed like Sammy's, you kind of have that luxury of grabbing someone that you might not need, but he could end up being a really, really high um, valued player that he can just go ahead and trade for another first rounder in the future. But I
Yeah,
mean, hats
exactly.
off to Sammy. I think he's kind of showing us how fantasy dynasty needs to be played. But
Yeah, definitely.
um, we'll move into my winner. My winner, and you know, I really did not want this person to be a winner, but I've been talking some shit with this person. But I gotta give credit where credit is due. Tyler, I think you just had an excellent draft. I really think that you were smart with your picks and you addressed a lot of needs. Coleman, I'm doubling down with Josh Allen. I think that's just really smart. I knew you weren't going for Brock Bowers. I mean, it just didn't make sense. Um, but I think that's a good pick, teaming him up, getting that duo, and then Senate. That was a good pick, getting some good depth. He was actually I was kind of torn between him and Malcolm Lloyd. I don't know. I don't know if I made the right
Marshawn,
pick, but yeah, yeah, yeah. What did I say?
Malcolm.
Malcolm, Malcolm Lloyd, Malcolm X. Um, no, I think that was good. And then Jermaine Burton, I think he can be kind of a difference maker this year. I think he's one of those depth players this year that can make a difference going in the third rounder. And then Aaron and I were talking earlier. I think the McCaffreys are like the Tarkarians. They got that pure blood, um, and I think that was a really good pick. And then Javon Baker, one of my favorites. I kind of regret not drafting him, but I have a lot of wide receiver depth, I feel. So Javon Baker was an excellent pick. And then grabbing the New York Giants running back, I think that was a really smart move too. I really wish I would have gone him in my queue versus um, Frank Gore Jr. Um, so, I mean, hats off to Tyler. I think he had a really good draft with, and he made his depth, his late rounders really. Um, I think he really valued those and did a good job of picking those.
Yeah, definitely. I think there are a lot of like really calculated dart throws, right? I think that taking Coleman in the first round might have been a little too rich, but given his draft capital, I mean, he didn't really have a choice. It's kind of one of those things where he saw the player that he wanted and he just took that
Right?
because he just can't, he wouldn't be able to wait. And he didn't have a
Oh,
second
no
round
way.
selection, so there is no way that he would have been even remotely capable of grabbing him. And then taking a player who's going to likely start in the third round and Ben Sinnott was a really another really good example of that value drop and being able to pounce on it so quickly. I think that my favorite pick from him specifically is probably Jermaine Burton. Um, I had debated going back and forth with him with my earlier third round selections, but I kind of felt like with my selection of Adonai Mitchell, I didn't really want to have another player that has these character concerns. And so I went with a little bit of a safer individual with Roman Wilson after that. But I think that that was such a great selection. It looks like he's going to be paired up really well with Burrow and the Bengals for long term, especially once T. Higgins eventually walks.
Right? Yeah.
And
That's a
Javon
smart one.
Baker, definitely, definitely. And
Hmm.
Javon Baker, I think, is a really interesting prospect, although some of the information that's coming out of like the New England training camps hasn't necessarily been the best, but he definitely has the tools to be a dominant receiver on the outside, given the time. And
Guy's
then
a
for
dog.
Tracy, yeah, especially from, he's got that pedigree too, right? Going to Alabama, in my opinion, is one of the better college programs for developing in wide receivers. And so, even though he kind of was low on the depth chart and transferred out to UCF, I still think that that's kind of a really good tell sign of being able to determine future success in the NFL.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah,
for his
definitely.
fourth and final pick, we got the Tyrone Tracy who, you know, could potentially be something, but he's definitely an interesting prospect on a team that definitely needs running back depth. So he could also be a pretty surprising player throughout the season as well. Overall, I think those late round selections really solidified his depth too.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I hate to, but I would agree. All right, moving on to my favorite, some draft losers. Aaron, go for it.
So I think for my loser, and I wouldn't necessarily say that this was a bad draft. I don't actually think that many of our managers even had a bad draft. But if we're going off of the team constructs and what the individuals are looking at to going with their squad, I would probably say that Weir didn't have the best draft class. I think that, the selection of Odunze was really good. I'm up in Washington, so I watched a lot of dog games, and I really think that Odunze is a great player. But I feel like maybe he could have gone with the quarterback. Jaden Daniels was still on the board. Weir's got a couple of quarterbacks. One of them, Cousins, coming off an injury, also getting a little bit older. So kind of shoring up that would have been probably a pretty good idea. And then the selection of Pearsall was just kind of interesting, just because you already have two of the San Francisco receivers. So why would you want to grab a third one? I mean, if maybe Debo or Ayuk gets traded, then that's one thing. But for now, it just doesn't seem to be a very smart pick.
Right?
You just don't
I
really
feel like
have.
I feel like Weir is kind of a wild card, and I feel like this draft just kind of showed that he's just kind of he does his own thing. He doesn't care what anybody thinks. I mean, he's gonna go out there and just send it.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, he's definitely one of the more fickle managers that we have. I do have to admit, though, I really like Bucky Irving as a third round pick. I think he was a really great running back at Oregon, very versatile. And I think the landing spot really benefits him just because, Tampa doesn't have any real established players behind Rashad. And I think that Bucky could potentially eat into some of that work. And then Malachi Corley, another good selection, but you went doubled up on receivers. You could have picked another potential player. Like I know that we've spoken about quarterbacks. There was Rattler still on the board. I'm not sure if I'm really in love with him as a player, but he has a potential chance to start this season, depending on if Derek Carr doesn't really get out the gate. You know,
Guy was a former uh, projected number one overall pick.
a little bit
But
of more character concerns as well, and then switching from Oklahoma to go to South Carolina probably kind of damped that a bit though.
I feel like he did better in South Carolina, though. I feel like he had his character problems in Oklahoma, and then moving to South Carolina, I think it kind of forced him to grow a little bit. I mean, it's hard to say how much. I mean, I watched that Netflix film where when he was in high school. Guy was a menace. I could see the character concerns right there. Guy was just an absolute menace. But I mean, you can grow a lot in 4 years, and I think going into the NFL and not having that pressure of the number one overall, and not having that expanded head could do him some good. So we'll see. He was one of those I was a little salty that I didn't get after the draft. I was wanting to pick him up, but it is what it is. Maybe I'll throw some trade offers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely hoping that he can start as well. I was pretty thrilled to be able to pick him up off the waiver. So
Yeah,
I don't know if Derek Carr is really going to be that good this season, but I like being able to possibly have a starting quarterback, especially in the super flex leagues.
right. Yeah, for sure. All right. Move on to my loser, and we're gonna talk a little bit of shit to Austin. Austin, I feel like you just did not do well. I feel like you were drinking, and just your picks got worse and worse. First of all, and I mean I can't talk much, but you traded them number one overall away. So goodbye, Harrison, to you. Although that stings because that was also me. I do like your two pick, but if you look at this guy, already has hamstring injury and going into training camp, and the guy was not that productive in college. Yeah, he had a lot of touchdowns, but he really wasn't that productive. I think in my opinion, I feel like he's just kind of getting pumped up because he went to the Kansas City Chiefs and he's fast. So people automatically think, oh, that's Tyreek Hill. So that wasn't my favorite pick. I do understand it. I mean, an ADP for rookies for a rookie draft, I think that's a decent pick. But did you really need Michael Penix? I don't think so. I mean, if you look at your quarterbacks, you have plenty of quarterbacks already. So picking up Penix, who's going to sit for a couple of years, for me, it doesn't make sense for the needs of your team. And then you fell asleep, obviously, and just auto drafted Sanders. I mean, what's going on? I feel like this, if anybody was a loser, we've got a clear loser right there in Austin.
Yeah, definitely. The scare for me for sure with Worthy is, we've already heard some of the soft tissue injuries. And for a speed guy, I mean, these are real big concerns. Now it's still pretty early. He can come back. These are all definitely within the realm of possibilities for sure, but that is pretty terrifying. And then taking Penix too, you kind of really only got one person potentially who's going to contribute for you this year. I think JT Sanders, while is a very athletic player, I'm not really sure about his, production in terms of a rookie on the Panthers offense. And so you're really only looking at maybe Worthy being able to be, a fill-in during your bye weeks. really hard to establish a solid draft class when you only have one player that's really going to be potentially usable.
right? Especially in like the next 3 years.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, Penix can potentially increase in value, but we're talking about in, maybe 2 years, right? Kirk Cousins just
Yeah,
resigned 4 years. Maybe he gets hurt. Hard to say, but we never try to input injury into predictions. So yeah, really questionable moves. Real questionable.
yeah, yeah. I didn't agree with it. Here, I'm just gonna share this real quick for the class. Here's Austin's first pick. Fire. Boom.
Yeah, that
Uh,
looks pretty great. He can definitely put in some damage for sure.
oh, definitely. All right. So that concludes our. Was there any other picks that you kind of wanted to highlight?
Um, I think for me, I think one of the selections that you actually had, it was actually a trade that we had made during the draft, where you had traded up to the 2-9 to get Leggett. I like him a lot as a player. And I also was pretty upset that you auto drafted Marshawn Lloyd. I was talking to Tyler and a couple of other managers in that same range to try and solidify my running back depth. And at this point, you had auto drafted, so you weren't even
Yeah,
available to trade with. So I was
I
pretty
knew I was
bummed
going
about
to
that
lose
for
service,
sure.
so I did queue up some players. It was between him and Senate because I feel like I need to address my tight end. It was between those two to kind of be that number one queued up or number two, and I was in my mind I was like, man, I feel like everybody after me um, has a good tight end. So maybe Senate. In my eyes, Senate was the most likely person to drop than Marshawn Lloyd, Malcolm Lloyd.
Yeah, and
But
I wasn't even expecting him to fall that far, even
right,
into the third is pretty crazy. And then
yeah,
of course, Ender broke my heart a little bit taking Brooks before me. Right
yeah,
before the
that was a good
selection,
pick.
I was really hoping that he could be on my team. I love Texas running backs. I think that Texas is another one of those programs that knows how to produce specific positions. And I was chatting with him during the draft, and I was hoping that he was going to go a different way, but ultimately he selected the player that I wanted, which really, really bummed me out. But it's still a great pick either way. I know that he had mentioned that he was looking for some running back help, so uh, it
Yeah,
seemed like it fit for him really well.
I really believe like if he would have picked Jaden Daniels in that 104, gotten Brooks there, and then I feel like he would have been that would have just solidified in my opinion, the best draft.
Oh, he could have had the best draft class for sure. Even if he swapped out Knicks for May, because at that point, Drake May was still on the board.
That's true. Yeah,
I mean, that would have also
yeah, that's
been
true.
huge. Having two potential top 10 quarterbacks like that on his rookie team, like that's pretty wild, especially for the value to drop so far.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. Sorry about that. Some technical difficulties. But so now we're moving on to bold predictions. And when I say bold predictions, I'm not saying that this is going to happen. This is not what I think is going to happen. But I feel there's definitely, maybe not definitely, but there's a path in which our bold predictions can happen. And so, with that being said, my first bold prediction is going to be Mr. Sammy himself misses playoffs. Let me
The
explain
darling of the
myself.
offseason, Sammy
Yes.
himself.
Yes, sir. And let me explain here. All right. So, in my eyes, I think there's a path where CJ Stroud is a little overhyped and could be very much like a Baker Mayfield, where he has a really strong rookie season and then falls off. I mean, Baker Mayfield had OBJ, Jarvis Landry, and a whole bunch of other weapons, Nick Chubb. And I feel like you kind of can compare CJ Stroud to that. Now, do I think that's going to happen? I don't know. I like CJ Stroud. I don't think so, but I think there's a path for that. We got Brees Hall, which Aaron Rodgers, I mean, if he shows back up to the facility, if Aaron Rodgers goes down, that offense is just not good. I think Brees Hall could still produce, but if won't produce as well if Aaron Rodgers is not the quarterback. Jonathan Taylor, another guy I like, but I hope Anthony Richardson takes all of those running back touchdowns. And Jonathan Taylor really has not been that really good running back since his one really good season. And even that really good season historically wasn't like a Christian McCaffrey year last year. Um, and so I think there's a path where he doesn't produce as well as his name value. And then last year, Cincinnati, even after everybody was healthy, was not the well-oiled machine that we think Cincinnati is. And if you take away the 1 year where Cincinnati went to the Super Bowl, Joe Burrow really has not done that well. And so now Sammy has two of those wide receivers. So if Joe Burrow is not producing and that offensive line is still struggling and they're just having to dump it off because Joe Burrow's getting demolished in the backfield, those could be two name valued assets that do not produce. And I am a Seahawks fan, but let's be real. Geno Smith, he is not the guy. And I think he can bounce back, but I think there could definitely be a year like last year where DK is just, again, the name values way more than what is produced. And we've got Marvin Harrison coming in. Terry McBride gets his targets taken away. We've got Rashad White, who's severely inefficient and could kind of fall off or get some of that volume taken away. And I feel like he was only good based off of volume. And then I've got him on my roster, but Sam Darnold, if it looks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, it is a duck. Sam Darnold's a duck. He's not going to be able to support Addison and JJ. No way. And then Caleb Williams, the guy probably can't even hold on the ball with all the nail polish on his fingers. Like, there's definitely a path, I feel, that Sammy's team just completely shits the bed this year, and he could just miss his playoffs.
Yeah, I think that Sammy does have quite a few players that are kind of like negative touchdown regression players, right? I
Agreed.
think having T. Higgins on your team, I mean, he's going to give you at least 12 games. Dude's never played a full season since I want to say his rookie year, and he's maybe going to come out motivated for a contract, but it really depends on and kind of hinges on Burrow and how that offense is run. And now with Burrow and the Bengals, they lost Mixon, so maybe they don't have the rushing attack that they did, and so teams can kind of scheme out their pass catchers. I still, Jamar Chase is still a stud. I think he's still going to get his, but does it leave a lot of room for other players, especially when they kind of lost a couple of key components in their coaching staff too? And having, Rashad White, as touched on earlier, I do think Bucky Irving is a capable candidate to take some of his looks away. And, Addison scored 10 touchdowns as a rookie. I don't think that's going to happen again, especially since it was during the time that JJ was injured. So I could see that, there's definitely a path. Caleb Williams is a rookie. As much as we love having that rookie hype, we can't necessarily anticipate that every rookie coming into the NFL is going to be like, CJ Stroud, for
Right.
example. These
Yeah.
are all outlier players. They're definitely not the normal. So we got to be understanding of that too.
Yeah. But we'll
Definitely.
see. I think I'm playing him week 1. Oh, I'm going backwards. Yeah, so maybe I can start off my bold prediction with I can back that up. We'll see.
Yeah, with an upset. Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
Definitely.
All
Well,
right. What's your first bold prediction?
my first bold prediction for this season is going to be that Travis, aka my McCaffrey ain't free, is going to have a better record than Jessica, aka you draft like a girl. Um, I think this is kind of a real fun flip of the best finishing team last season and the worst finishing team. I think that, free agency really impacted this decision. Travis has a lot of players that really benefited from free agency. He has Derrick Henry going from, Tennessee's offense to potentially one of the more positive run heavy teams in Baltimore. They've already talked about how they're going to utilize him significantly. He got CMC re-signed again to San Francisco, so he seems to be another cheat code at the position. Gus Edwards, who everybody's really quick to write off, is also in
Mhm.
another very run-friendly offense in LA. So I think that these are players that really can, don't have a lot of necessary value aside from CMC, but they could make a big impact just based off of the free agency. He got a couple of young pass catchers, JSN and Quentin Johnston, who, honestly, I'm not a big QJ fan, but, second year wide receiver leaps are they're more probable. A lot of individuals kind of go off of that statistic, and just based off of what's being told about the Seattle camps, JSN looks to be a real big integral part of that offense. And also Seattle made some really nice coaching changes. I really liked them bringing in Grubb from UW. But it'll be kind of something interesting to look at just based off of how, the defensive minded coaches with them bringing in McDonald, and see how that works in terms of, fantasy points for players and kind of how that dynamic goes during actual NFL versus fantasy. And on the other hand, I think Jessica's team got weaker based off of free agency. She got Herbert, who is still primed to be an elite quarterback. It's just with all of the talk about this run heavy offense, very smash mouth, old school. Does that make him more of a better NFL quarterback versus a fantasy quarterback? That's hard to say. Nick Chubb is also coming off of what's possibly and has been talked about as a potentially career-ending injury just for other players. Um, could he
Right.
even return to that, caliber? This is a second major knee injury, and it's, his age is also kind of coming up there. He's getting old. He's getting old in terms of running backs. I do like that she's, has some good, foundational pieces. I think Pacheco and Tyreek Hill are good, safe players, but I don't know about Pickens as much. He seems very streaky. He's a player that can easily kind of go off for like 150 and 2 on one week and then just kind of disappear the next week. And the
H-
quarterback play, I don't know, man. I,
He'll
I
be
mean,
he'll be good once Justin Fields gets in.
yeah, we'll see. We'll see. But even
uh,
Fields, if he does, he could still vulture some of those passes away.
right. Yeah.
And then and just in general, her team is fairly old. She got Keenan,
Right.
who has, the worst hamstrings known to man. He's probably he'll miss some time. It's been a while since
Definitely.
it's been a while since he's had those dominant years from 2017 to 2021. So we'll
Yeah,
see. The
I had
Bears,
Tyreek on a team or on a league last year, and guy produced, but it seemed like every game he was going out for a couple drives because of some kind of injury, and now he's just a year older. Like he's
mhm.
good, but I mean, how many more years are you going to get out of him?
Yeah, I mean, Tyreek is a difference maker for sure. He cooked me when we played each other. So, I mean, these things they're definitely possible. He's easily capable of winning a week, but it's just a little bit of the fact that the team is older, not a lot of like substantial moves during off season to really bolster that team, at least in terms
Right.
of her squad as the manager. And then, with Keenan Allen, he's still such a great PPR player, but it's hard to really judge how well a player is going to be with a rookie coming in, kind of similarly
Right.
with what we spoke about with Sammy. And since he's the
New
Caleb
team,
Williams manager,
new scheme, new quarterback. Yeah.
hard to
Yeah, there's a lot
say.
of question marks for sure. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting, but I just don't see this team producing like it did last year. I think you touched on all the key points. And Travis Kelsey, I really think that they're going to kind of hold him back until the playoffs. And I did like her move picking up Wiley, but I mean, he's no Travis Kelsey. There's only one
Yeah, they're
Travis
good
Kelsey.
good depth moves for sure. Um, we'll see. You know, she did have two pretty good picks in the rookie draft. I did think that they were pretty good. I like Lad McConkey. I also like Brian Thomas a lot. And so it made a lot of sense for her to pair, Lad especially with Herbert. But it's
Yeah.
still that team. It still worries me. The running game, the fact that they want to really emphasize that. It's just a little concerning for sure.
Yeah, definitely. All right, moving on to my second bold prediction. And I don't like this one. I'm talking this guy up today. I don't know what's wrong with me, but Tyler, I think no, I don't think. But my bold prediction is Tyler's going to repeat. And here's the path. What I
That's
think.
pretty bold.
It is. It is. I really do think it's bold. I think his team's kind of there's a lot of question marks, but I really do think that there's a path in which he can repeat. I mean, whenever you have Josh Allen on your team, you can win almost any week. And then Alvin Kamara, you touched on it earlier. Derek Carr is not a reliable quarterback, and all he did was dump it off to Kamara. And every time on a PPR, Kamara's can be so valuable. And with Arizona bolstering up their offense, I think James Conner, if he stays healthy, guy can produce and be he can win some weeks. And then you've got I don't like the fact that he has Nakua and Cup, and I think that's why he's trying to trade away Cup. But he's got all of the Rams receiving options, and he's got all that volume. And Stafford's older, but the guy is he's a very talented quarterback. And I think if he stays healthy, there's a path where Nakua can be a top 10 wide receiver again. And same with Rashee Rice. I mean, you are bringing in Worthy, you're bringing in Hollywood Brown, but who has the chemistry? It's Rice. And Rice may not get suspended this year. It might be next year. So I think there's a possibility he could also be another top 10 wide receiver. And Mike Evans, Mr. Consistent as your third wide receiver who has produced over 1,000 yards every single year and is going to be that staple of that offense. I think he could, again, be a very consistent, good running or good wide receiver that helps you win the weeks. And then Sam Laporta is going to be the number one tight end. In redraft, the guy's going in like the second round. This guy is after 1 year, already got the Travis Kelsey effect where he's getting drafted in the first 2 rounds. It's crazy. And he can be such a positional advantage compared to anybody else. I just think that he could also win some weeks. And then I touched on Cooper Kupp, and then Nico Collins just got the bag. The guy is the number one option in Houston. And he's got a good, reliable second quarterback in Dak Prescott. I just feel like there's definitely a path where Tyler just steamrolls over a whole bunch of teams, and we're just in the end we are handing him over more of our money, and he can just hold on to that championship trophy for the next year. Now, do I think it's going to happen? No, but I do think that there's a path.
Yeah, definitely. I think that it's kind of, his team is also a little bit older too, but it's not necessarily like Jessica's team where it's like the production can fall. I think that while
Mm-hmm.
his team did get a little bit older, he still has those proven players that are still able to produce. James Conner specifically is probably going to be at least like a top 15 running back. I mean, he's like it every single year, it seems like. And Mike Evans is probably going to be good for like 80 and 1,000. So, I mean, these are all great numbers for having, on your team, especially like with Evans being a third receiver. And then Rashee Rice just putting in some volatility to his lineup, but he's still a young player that he can really, take that second year leap that we like to talk about. And I love Cooper Cup. I had him a couple of times when he was very dominant, so I know the feeling. The issue that I have with Tyler is that he has some players that would be really nice to get off his team, but I know that he's too emotionally tied to them. So they're just unfortunately players that will never be traded unless we're paying some exorbitant price, and I just can't fathom that. But, his team definitely looks pretty good. Maybe
Are you are
next
you are
year.
you planting a seed there?
No, I can't. I can't. I don't have the gall for that. But
Uh,
maybe next year, maybe, but I just don't see how he would be, making a really big steep turn to being in the bottom half of the league. He seems to be
yeah,
pretty set up for this season for sure.
yeah, I agree. And if he keeps, in my opinion, if he keeps drafting the way he does, he's going to be set up for the future. But I think he's going to struggle definitely after this year, um, if not this year. But like I said, I think there's definitely a path for him to be a dominant force again. But
Yeah, for his next season, it does seem a little bit more of a challenge just because he only has like 2 draft picks, and so just looking
right,
how our league kind of is in terms of trades and such, it might be a challenge for him to really recoup, but we'll see what happens. I know that we play with some pretty sharp managers, so I'm
right,
sure that
yep,
some things can happen.
yeah. And I think as we move on over the years, the gap between like maybe some people's knowledge of Dynasty compared to others, everyone's going to kind of like come together to where like all of our knowledge, like the people that may have been behind are going to start catching up in terms of knowledge of Dynasty. And I think everyone, as the years go on, we're going to just get better and better. And it's going to be, I feel, harder to kind of have that dominant team year over year.
Yeah, that's the hope, we wanna always have a
Right.
competitive league for all of the managers, so,
Yeah.
but for sure.
All right.
Alright,
Moving on
so
to your next bold prediction.
my last bold prediction for this is going to be that Austin or Kareem in her hunt, I don't think that he'll win over 6 games. I really don't
Oof.
see it. You brought up his draft class, a similar kind of concept. He only got one player who could potentially produce for him. The other 2 players probably won't see his starting lineup at all. Um, he definitely has some talent for sure. I love his quarterback room looks really set with Mahomes and Tua, and I love Amon Ra. I tried to trade for him, but it's hard to peel those kinds of players off of managers who just put up a top 5 season. I just don't know if I truly believe in DJ Moore, especially with the rookie quarterback and the new receiving targets. I really wouldn't be surprised if Odunze was the primary benefactor of Williams, to be honest. I think that Odunze is just a dog. And
Yeah, he
him
is.
trading 3 players for Stephon Diggs, I thought was really, really strange. I think that Diggs is a good player, but you know, it's hard to trade that much for a 30-year-old receiver who's on a
Oof.
one-year contract, who might not even be on the Texans. It just doesn't seem like a very savvy move. And I don't think that
No.
his bench has a lot of depth. I think
Right.
that the draft could have really bolstered it, but it just didn't seem to be really beneficial. He'll have both of his quarterbacks on bye week in week 6, so he'll have to play potentially a bench quarterback or a waiver wire quarterback. I'm not really
Michael Penix.
sure. Yeah, Penix could come in the lineup. He might give him 0, and then he
Uh,
also is hit with the significant bye weeks in week 10 and 14. I just don't see it. I just don't see that his bench has the capacity to really, produce for his studs while they're out. I mean, in
right.
my opinion, he could easily be looking at the 101 next year.
Right. And when you got Ferguson as one of your flexes, oof,
I
oof.
mean, we're not tight end premium.
No. And I mean, I didn't realize how bad. I didn't realize how bad this trade was. I mean, in my opinion, this reeks of desperation. I mean, why would you? I don't know. I don't know. I don't agree with it. I don't think Stephon Diggs. I think last year the second half just really showed where he's headed, off a
Yeah,
cliff, along with Austin's
definitely.
team.
Yeah, and if you're not producing with Josh Allen, are you gonna produce with Stroud? I mean, I think Stroud's a great quarterback, but I
True.
mean, Josh Allen is the GOAT. He's number 1 right now. There's a reason for that. So if he can't produce with a player of Allen's caliber, can we really
Right.
expect much
And
for him in the Texans?
who was his competition at the Bills? Gabe Davis. And so
Oh,
now he's got
Gabe.
Nico Collins, and Tank Dell. Yeah, I don't. There's a lot of mouths to feed in that offense,
Yeah, so it'll definitely be an interesting season when we come up to it, but I just don't see it for them this year.
right? I don't either. I like that bold prediction. I don't think that's so bold. Although six games that's like only winning a third of your games. 18 weeks, right?
Yeah.
We'll see, but
Six
I
I
don't think
mean, we
that's
had
too
a
bold.
couple I think we had like 3 managers this last season, myself included, only win 6 games, so
Yeah, and I mean with his running backs too, I could definitely see a path where Charbonnet takes a lot more work, and Najee Harris has not been that efficient, and um, oh, who's the other? I can't. I'm name blanking here. Who's the other running back?
Oh, Jalen Warren?
Jalen Warren. I wanted to say Jalen Waddle. I knew that was wrong. Jalen Warren has been more efficient and produced more with his touches over last
Yeah, he
year.
just
So,
looks more explosive. He's
mhm,
just he's just a different speed when he plays.
guy's a dog.
I think Najee will be volume relevant, but we'll
Yeah,
see. That Arthur Smith offense typically caters to a running approach. So there is a sign, or I mean, there's definitely signs that could point to Najee being a top 20 back, but
and when
it's hard.
Justin Fields is starting, he's going to be taking away some of those rushing touchdowns too. So,
Yeah, he won't be
got
the
to
goal
consider that
line
too.
back. Or when
Hmm.
Justin Fields is RB1, I seen that he was doing some running back drills. I'd be a little bit worried too. When you're having the quarterback doing running back drills, I'm a little concerned.
Guy's a Swiss
Little
Army knife.
concerned. Dude, he will be next thing you know, he's gonna be fielding punts.
No, no, no. I don't think I don't think they'd be dumb if they were doing that. Okay. All right. Well, that concludes our podcast for this evening. Like I said, we're going to be doing some more podcasts, maybe get some more guests in here. I wouldn't mind having three. I think maybe over three starts to get a little crowded, too many chefs in the kitchen. But I think having three, maybe get some other guests in here. I know I've done a podcast with Austin in the past. I don't think that would be a bad idea. And then maybe get Tyler in here. Um, we can get Jessica in here. We can get anybody in here. Maybe we'll get a special guest one day. Maybe we'll get a Seahawk in here when we blow up.
And we gotta
But
make it big.
yeah, but we'll come up with some plans and some ideas of what our next topics will be. This ran a little bit longer than I expected, but that's all right. You guys can sit on the toilet and watch us a little bit longer.
It's some good
All right.
hard-hitting facts, hard-hitting facts.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Aaron, for joining.
For sure.
Peace out, everybody.